There might be no character in all of modern gaming more controversial and divisive than Miquella the Kind. The twin prodigy born of a single god, an Empyrean chosen for godhood, the founder of a new faith and the Order of Unalloyed Gold. The remains of Miquella's influence and power can be seen scattered across the lands between, but his true nature is left ambiguous. Even his journey to godhood in the Land of Shadow only reinforces how polarizing he is. So I invite you to join me today as we follow in Miquella's footsteps and uncover the deeper meaning behind the core mechanic and theme that underpins this controversy, an aspect of Elden Ring's lore which I believe to be one of the most misunderstood. Because to understand Miquella's charm is to gain greater insight into his character, goals, and even the message that's being told through the shadow of the Erdtree. My hope is that before you comment or respond, you'll watch as much of this video as possible and be open to the evidence that Elden Ring presents us. So it's time now to touch the withered arm and enter the realm of shadow to take a deeper look into Miquella's true power, unalloyed love.
Doubtless it'd have all come to blows at first glance, were it not for the charm kindly Miquella put upon us.
Maybe that's kindly Miquella's love. Love for all the unloved. Love to banish the pain.
Miquella the Kind is a monster, pure and radiant. He wields love to shrive clean the hearts of men. There is nothing more terrifying.
This is what allows us to serve together, the work of a living God.
Well, I wonder what comes next. If he continues his slumber within the cocoon, all would be well. But perhaps it would be safer to destroy it. Miquella is the one thing that remains a mystery to me.
On February 28, 2023, FromSoft officially announced the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion with this image. Director Hidetaka Miyazaki confirmed it to be depicting Miquella riding toward the Shadow Tree on the back of Torrent, or one of Torrent's species. It was widely speculated that any DLC content for Elden Ring would involve the cocoon in Mohg's boss arena and feature Miquella of the Halig Tree. That was all confirmed by this image, and in the lead up to the expansion's release, opinions on Miquella were mixed. He was presented as a young child with great power and intentions, but there were hints of an ominous side to the nascent Empyrean. Certain details of Elphiel appeared a bit suspicious. And of course there's the bewitching branch, which tells us the Empyrean Miquella is loved by many people. Indeed, he has learned very well how to compel such affection. We'll return to this later, but it made it sound like Miquella found a way to intentionally manipulate others into loving him. Did he use these branches and similar incantations? Well, like many of you, I had my Tarnished sit patiently by Miquella's hand on June 21st, 2024, waiting for a portal to be opened. Finally, after being greeted by Needle Knight Leda, I touched the withered arm and was transported quietly to the Land of Shadow. The hours which followed were some of the most challenging, thought-provoking I'd experienced as a gamer. The driving force behind the narrative was my interactions with Miquella's band of followers, led by Leda herself. Hours later, after arriving at Shadu Altus, the first plot twist comes. Leda tells us plainly that,
Hello again. Did you meet my compatriots? They're quite the congregation, from places as far and wide as you can imagine. Doubtless it'd have all come to blows at first glance, were it not for the charm kindly Miquella put upon us. This is what allows us to serve together, the work of a living God.
So this diverse group has been following Miquella because he charmed them. We go on to learn that some of them would have followed him anyway, but at that point I asked myself, what are the depths and the effects of this enchantment? Is he in fact brainwashing these characters after all? I felt pretty disappointed. I'd come to appreciate Miquella as a character and looked forward to a truly good demigod who wished to fix things. But all of this was called into question with this revelation. Things were only made more complicated when Miquella discarded his Great Rune and his charm was broken. Each NPC recounted their experiences before and under the charm, and of course Ansbach's speech stood out to me and carried me forward in my mission. As the rest of the game unfolded, I was left confused and honestly saddened at how Miquella's character arc was set to conclude. The quests in Shadowkeep, the battle in Enir Ilim, and Ansbach's revelation that Mohg himself had been charmed. It all left me determined to walk out victorious, even if I might go on to regret it. But in the weeks that followed my win over promised consort Radahn, something didn't sit right with me. Things are rarely what they seem on the surface. After all, this is FromSoft. This is a game written by Hidetaka Miyazaki. For all the negative opinions shared in the lore community about Miquella at the time, something about him resonated with me, and I felt as if I had missed something. So I asked myself, was there more to Miquella's enchantment than I'd realized? It wasn't long before I discovered that there was a lot more. So here's my thesis up front. Miquella's power isn't brainwashing or even some kind of spell. Miquella's true power is unalloyed love, which metaphysically purifies the soul. This revelation fundamentally shifted how I saw Miquella and the narrative of Shadow of the Erdtree. And it all started when I began to listen to the Shadow Realm's characters and the stories they had to tell. Near the Three-Path Cross, you encounter Hornsent, a survivor of Messmer's Purge who met Miquella and answered the call to follow. Even though he's grateful for Miquella's promise to redeem the Hornsent people, he remains a guarded and distant companion throughout the journey. He wears the caterpillar mask, marking him as a former greater potentate. Its description reads, "Grotesque mask constructed from countless solidified caterpillars. A ritual implement of the greater potentates of Bonny Village. Used to ward off thoughts of impurity, doubt, temptation, and other wickednesses one is vulnerable to while absorbed in divine ritual. As a greater potentate, he would have been a part of ritually and grotesquely combining shaman maidens with other Hornsent criminals in an attempt at spiritual and moral purification and transformation. We also know from his interactions that he grew up near or in Belurat, where Messmer's flame burned the fiercest. The Hornsent Grandam's scorpion stew brings back nostalgic but painful memories for him. He was filled with rage and a hunger for revenge after the destruction of his home, but at some point, Hornsent encountered Miquella in the Land of Shadow and was left enchanted. He makes it clear that the Erdtree faithful will never be fully trusted or deemed worthy in his eyes, but he's accepted Miquella's apology and promised to redeem Hornsent's clan. Once the charm breaks, he comments that it mattered little. Initially, he explains that Miquella's fulfilled promise will bring him contentment, yet his mindset quickly shifts. He says,
"Clear resounds the call of vengeance. The Impaler, Messmer, must pay his due. In vengeance for the flames. My blade I wield. How could I allow myself to forget? Revenge alone assures me peace of mind."
Should we summon him? And he successfully helps us in defeating Messmer. He confesses,
"If Miquella's redemption soothes the ache that throbs within, demanding blessed vengeance, then I wish not to be by him redeemed."
So even in vengeance, peace eludes him. On the other hand, should we slay Messmer alone? Hornsent's quest for revenge is extinguished and he cries out to his lost wife and child for guidance. To me, the tragedy is that if Hornsent manages to get his revenge, we will never hear of his deceased family. He loses himself in his bloodlust. As Letta comments,
Wherever he goes, he won't last long. I needn't bother with him. Unruly emotions only lead to misfortune. All the more reason we need someone like Miquella the Kind.
Along with Hornsent, you meet Redmane Freya at the Three Paths Cross. From her armor, we learn that she was a gladiator who fought in combat in the Colosseums. Golden armor of Redmane Freya, member of General Radahn's most distinguished knights, affixed with a black woolen mantle. After witnessing Freya's valor as a gladiator in his youth, Radahn invited her to join the ranks of his most trusted warriors. As one of Radahn's elite, Freya would have been there with the lion when he clashed with Melania. So Freya's dialogue before the charm breaks is interesting, as if she remembers the moment she was enchanted by Miquella. She says, "Long ago, I was stricken by scarlet rot in the swamp of Aeonia. Immobile, feverish, and in great pain, I was entirely resigned to death. I was left behind, and only kindly Miquella was good enough to seek me out. My wound was swollen and festering, exuding a most pungent odor, and yet he drained the poison from it, despite my wretched visage. Now I consider this wound my compass. Let us both take kindly Miquella's guidance to heart." Her helm's description corroborates her story. Golden helm of Redmane Freya, member of General Radahn's most distinguished knights. A hideous scarlet wound was once hewn into the center of her face. Later, Miquella gently put his lips to it, and the unfading scar became the compass that Freya would thereafter follow. Once the charm breaks, nothing changes for Freya, except that she now wants to understand the vow that Miquella made with Radahn.
If you happen to see Lady Leda, tell her that I'm striking out on my own. Don't worry, I've no mind to cross any of you. The guidance of kind Miquella remains etched into my very flesh.
With the help of Ansbach, she learns that Miquella had vowed to revive Radahn's soul and give him a new vessel. Along with theorizing I had been doing on my own, Consecrated Lorefield has a great video about this theory regarding the vow in a video that I linked below. But come the end, Freya gets to fight in another arena for valor and glory one last time. Near the steps of Bellurat, we meet Mor. His main interest is scavenging and finding things for Miquella's followers and the Forager Brood, all in the name of Miquella the Kind. Sensing that Miquella's charm has broken, Mor seems helpless.
I don't feel it. It's broken. Kind Miquella's light is gone. But I stand tall. Together, we work. Together, for Miquella the Kind.
Freya described Miquella's charm as a kind of guidance. Now, Mor calls it light. Light is a central theme in Elden Ring. When I think of light, my mind automatically goes to the Erdtree and its grace. Light is associated with the guidance of grace and how it leads the tarnished on the path towards the end goal. The Erdtree's light blesses us with health, and it is said that the light of the grace of gold shines in the eyes of those living in the lands between. The Shadow Realm rune even tells us that for this reason, gold shines all the brighter in the land of shadow. But for Mor, Miquella's light was his guidance. We then learn that Mor is grieving that their mother abandoned them. If we tell him to put it behind him, Mor comments solemnly,
Maybe that's kindly Miquella's love. Love for all the unloved. Love to banish the pain.
There next to Mor is the Honorable Sir Ansbach. The former captain of the Pureblood Knights under Lord Mohg, Ansbach also encountered Miquella and was left enchanted. Even under the charm, Ansbach is only cautiously following the Empyrean. He needs to know why Miquella is in the Land of Shadow so that he can determine how best to be of service. Right after the charm breaks, he tells us,
Once, In an attempt to free Lord Moog from his enchantment, I challenged tender Miquella, only to have my own heart rather artfully stolen. I knew not how weak I was. I believed that with sufficient mastery, even an Empyrean would be within reach of my blade. I could not have been more mistaken.
And then he famously says,
Miquella the Kind is a monster, pure and radiant. He wields love to shrive clean the hearts of men. There is nothing more terrifying.
With Miquella's charm gone, fearful memories return to Ansbach, and he doubles down on his loyalty to his former lord. The Wise Man's Mask tells us, the iron mask of Sir Ansbach, giving the appearance of a quiet, wise, old bearded man, but an old fear lurks beneath, together with the cold, unflinching discipline that once honed his blade, now employed to enhance blood oath and dynastic skills. The description of his robe says, the attire of Sir Ansbach, the embroidered crest of the pureblood knights has now all but faded away. Ansbach understood that keeping his oath to his old master was not an act of logic, nor would it bear any justice, but it was for these very reasons he was unable to let go. The aged warrior is unsure if he will be able to face Miquella in the name of Moog. But if we summon him in our fight against Leda and her allies, he declares, how readily the sensation returns, the runaway spirit of war. Old habits die hard. And speaking of habits, at the Pillar Path site of grace is Tialier, the young performer with a gift for poisons and self-deprecation. As we learn later in the game, Tialier may have crossed paths with Miquella while seeking out the enigmatic Saint Trina. Similarly, without Miquella's charm, Tialier reflects,
Are you not affected? Even with the spell broken, I'm feeling rather lost, haunted by memories of St. Trina, her visage, her scent, the lure of velvety sleep. Would kindly Miquella chasten me for falling for St. Trina, while knowing that she was the discarded half? The problem is, I simply cannot help it. I would sacrifice everything just to gaze upon her one last time.
This implies that Miquella's charm had repressed certain memories and desires connected to Saint Trina. Now free, Tialier travels south to the Cerulean coast, not because he despises Miquella, but because the rich slumber of Trina's velvety nectar calls to him. Finally, we meet Needle Knight Leda. Early on in her quest line, Leda tells us,
We are all utterly captivated by kindly Miquella. It is what binds us together.
However, she explains later on, I've come to the realization there's ample evidence without kindly Miquella's influence, I am quite mistrustful of others. Leda's quest revolves around purging the followers of those she deems unworthy. She's a zealot, and under Miquella's charm, it seems as if her zeal is calmed. As I compared the words and actions of each of the NPCs, I realized that they described the true nature of Miquella's power. Both Ansbach and Moore explicitly identify Miquella's power as love, and the circumstances around the other characters' enchantments imply the same. This article on Bandai Namco's website makes it even more clear. Miquella's power is love. To take this a step further, remember what Ansbach said. Pure and radiant, he wields love. Somehow, Miquella can intentionally direct and use love, just as a person would wield a sword or a shield. This reminds me of the Roman god Cupid, the one associated with Valentine's Day. In some ways, Cupid could be seen as maybe an inspiration for Miquella and his power. They're both the children of divine couples and are directly associated with love. Cupid, the son of Venus, was viewed as a good but sometimes mischievous god, and he was often depicted either as a young man or even a little child who would use arrows to leave people helplessly in love. With that in mind, I turned to the sharp, pointed objects associated with Miquella's power. We just can't talk about Miquella's charm without bringing up the charming and bewitching branches. Miquella's power was alluded to in the base game with the bewitching branch. Tree branch blessed with an incantation of unalloyed gold. Pierce a foe, using FP to turn them into a temporary ally. The Empyrean Miquella is loved by many people. Indeed, he has learned very well how to compel such affection. When looking at craftable items, especially those with narrative weight like this one, it can be helpful to analyze its ingredients. And the Bewitching Branch and its DLC counterpart are two examples. You craft the Bewitching Branch specifically with Miquella's Lily and a Sacramental Bud. Miquella's Lily is described as the flower beloved by Miquella in his youth. We can see the unalloyed gold moving through the flower. It represents faith in the Halig Tree, which I take to mean the faith that Miquella's followers have in the Halig Tree. Miquella's Lily can be looted in nearly every zone, except for in and around Leyendell, aside from a few in back alleys, and also in Limgrave. These are the two areas that are the most Erdtree sympathetic, and it's where we find the least of Miquella's lilies. Now we turn to the Sacramental Bud. In my video about flower theory, I talked about the Sacramental Bud, and I encourage you to go back and watch that video if you haven't, but I want to take a moment and clarify and amend my view of the Sacramental Bud. Just as I was finishing that script, I came to a conclusion about the Sacramental Bud that I decided to save for another video. Lance McDonald's discovery of the unused Miquella cutscene at the Halig Tree is a treasure trove for us lore enthusiasts and is honestly what prompted this video. Based on the close-up of the Halig Tree sapling, I now agree that the Rhymed Crystal Bud, the Crystal Bud, and the Sacramental Bud are all offshoots from the Halig Tree, originally watered by Miquella's own blood. Just as Miquella's Lily represents faith in the Halig Tree, perhaps these buds represent efforts by Miquella's followers or even himself to have the promise of the Halig Tree take root in other zones and in other contexts. Unfortunately, removed from their direct connection to Miquella and the Halig Tree itself, these shoots are overcome by their environment and never reach full maturity. So, in my flower video, I argued that the Sacramental Bud was being choked by blood-drenched soil in battlefields, near Millicent, and also at the Writhe-Blood ruins near a major Mogwin dynasty outpost. It being a bud from the Halig Tree only really confirms my theory. In the cutscene, we see the sapling draw in Miquella's blood and bloom almost immediately as the Empyrean's abundance nourished it. The flowers open and blood bursts out. It's this blood that allows the Halig Tree to go on and glow with a golden light. When we look at the Sacramental Bud's design, we can see it continuing to pull in blood from the earth, but this isn't Miquella's blood. Rather than blossoming, it never opens. Like the other buds, it remains immature. Its removal from the Halig Tree and presence of foreign blood in its environment has stopped its growth. Now, here's a close-up of the bud. Is it just me, or does it look a lot like Miquella's cocoon? The cocoon where Mohg's followers would make their offerings of blood to water it for the day Miquella would awake as the god of Mohg's new age. Anyway, Fever, a follower of Saint Trina, discovered that by combining the Sacramental Branch with Miquella's Lily, you can create a tool that imitates Miquella's power, but imperfectly. You can only bewitch one person at a time, which can still come in handy, especially out of self-defense. In Shadow of the Erdtree, FromSoft introduced an upgraded version named the Charming Branch. branch blessed with an incantation of unalloyed gold. Uses FP to stab an enemy, charming it and the surrounding enemies. Charmed enemies act as your allies for a short while. Those who would otherwise be at each other's throats are united in service to Miquella as long as the charm remains intact. The recipe for the charming branch, found in the 7th Forager Brood cookbook, calls for 1 dew gem, beast horn, and the Empyrean blood burgeon. We'll start there. A young shoot heavy with Empyrean blood, material used for crafting items, exceedingly rare to find. Said to burgeon forth from where the golden blood of Miquella the wounded Empyrean pooled. At each cross found outdoors, where Miquella divests a piece of his flesh, this flower has started to grow and blossom. It isn't mixed with other blood. It's as if Miquella's blood was able to bring forth life almost out of nothing. This is unalloyed gold blood at its purest. Next, consider the beast horn, which can be looted from animals around the realm of shadow. Horn suffused with spirituality, found by hunting horned beasts of the realm of shadow. The crucible has a particularly strong influence on the beasts of the realm of shadow, causing many to grow horns despite the characteristics of their species. I think the most important details here are that these horns are exceedingly spiritual, and that they are a result of proximity to the crucible. This spiritual energy of the crucible is able to alter the appearance of living things in ways outside of what is normal for them. Finally is the dew gem. Succulent plant that has supped on night-tinged dew, glows at night and blossoms mainly at the waterside. Said to have been used in the practice of sprite medicine long ago. Dew plays an important role in the mythology and metaphysics of Elden Ring. It's connected explicitly to the moon, stars, and fate, as we learn from Celestial Dew's description. A hidden tear found in the Eternal City, also known as a night tear, allows one to carry out an absolution at the Church of Vows, reversing all antagonizations. Once upon a time, the stars of the night sky guided fate, and this is a recollection of those times. The nature of tears would be for another video, but just as the Erdtree produced sap which formed tears as they pooled in basins, it seems as if the dew left behind by the stars is the residual sap of the night, which could guide and alter fate itself. Plants like the dew-kissed herba and the dew gem drink this dew and retain its power. In fact, as Muriel tells us,
Radagon once cleansed himself with celestial dew, repented his territorial aggressions, and swore his love to Renala. The order of the Erdtree and the fate of the moon were conjoined, and all the wounds of war forgiven.
In the same way, we can use celestial dew to reset NPC states should we make them hostile. Even Princess Ronnie. The question is, do we just wipe everyone's memories? Or did something about us change that altered how they perceive us? Does dew act as resting at a site of grace does through altering time and the strands of causality themselves? These ingredients tell us that something about Miquella's charm is connected to his own unique Empyrean nature, involves a spiritual power which can grow something on a person beyond what comes natural to them, and finally is related to their guidance, fate, and interactions with those around them. But even though the charming branch is much closer to Miquella's power, it is still a handcrafted imitation. With these two branches, you stab an enemy and they turn into your ally. Even better, you stab an enemy and they, along with anyone in close proximity, become your ally for a while. This imitates Miquella's power as we see in the expansion. But no one else personifies Miquella's charm better than Needle Knight Leda. Her sword is a light great sword with gold inlaid. Weapon of Leda, the Needle Knight. Deals holy damage. Though polished to a mirror sheen, this blade still reeks with the stench of crusted blood that lingers from the call of her knightly comrades. Its unique skill is the Needle Piercer. Skill of Needle Knight Leda generates 10 golden needles, which pierce their target all at once. Those pierced are purged of all ailments and special effects alike. Leda's Needle Piercer functions much like the Golden Order's law of regression, which undoes mimicry of all kinds, as well as any ailments and status effects. Essentially, these spells revert things back to their original neutral state. Leda's armor description also tells us, quote, "Kindly Miquella fashioned us as his needles to quell all, ward away all." It was at this point when I realized that the branches aren't the only pointed, sharp objects associated with Miquella, so I decided to turn to his needles. On the edge of the Aeonian swamp in Caelid, Sage Gowry has us retrieve a broken needle from Commander O'Neill. After Gowry repairs it, he asks us to take it to Millicent up the hill. Once you arrive at the Church of the Plague, Millicent says,
"You ask that I stab myself with the needle to quell the scarlet rot, but how?"
She pierces her skin, and after awakening, she goes on to say,
"With the needle buried in my flesh, I've started to recall, but dimly, my destiny."
In Elphiel, after the battle with her sisters, we gather the needle from her remains, which says, "An intricately crafted needle of unalloyed gold, removed by Millicent from her flesh, bears no trace of befouled blood, but is faintly moist with dew. There is something I must return to Melania. The dignity, the sense of self that allowed her to resist the call of the Scarlet Rod." When we enter Melania's room, at the base of the Halig tree roots, Melania awakens and tells us,
"I dreamt for so long. My flesh was dull gold, and my blood rotted. Corpse after corpse left in my wake. As I awaited his return."
We see in her flesh what looks to be a woven pattern, as if golden strands of fate are holding her together. And once we finally defeat Melania and we interact with her bloom, upon resting at a site of grace, we receive Miquella's needle, one of the unalloyed gold needles that Miquella crafted to ward away the meddling of outer gods. Capable of subduing the flame of frenzy if inherited, allowing one to cheat fate and avoid becoming Lord of Frenzied Flame. However, the needle is as yet unfinished and can only be used in the heart of the storm beyond time, said to be found in Farum Azula. Miquella's unalloyed golden needles and the skills of his needle knights all pierce flesh and ward off, purge, subdue harmful outside influences, the powers even of outer gods, and even cheat fate itself. There's a fascinating real-world inspiration from Miquella's needles that was posted by Reddit user NovemberQuat, which I link here in the description. And it ties both the branches and the needles together perfectly. The Susuk needle, or charm needle as it's known, has been used in traditional practices throughout Southeast Asia for generations. According to literature and research, practitioners would have small needles, usually golden, inserted under their skin with the belief that they could bring good luck, heal wounds and sicknesses, and ward off impure spirits. They're not dangerous, and you cannot feel them. Doctors once did a scan of a woman, and they discovered that she had hundreds of these needles under her skin. These golden, charm needles. Here's what I'm seeing in all of this. In true FromSoft fashion, they want us to dig deeper, to draw out the thematic connection between Miquella's needles and his charm. Leda and the branches are the pieces that tie this together. The branches show us that the charm pierces the person like the needles do. The needles ward off, subdue, quell the influence of the outer gods. They enable us to cheat fate. We know this because instead of blood, dew covers the unalloyed golden needle that was in Millicent's body. Her fate had been altered by Miquella's craftsmanship. Likewise, the charming branch must be made with Miquella's golden blood, the power of crucible spirituality, and the fate-guiding nectar of dew. With this evidence in front of me, I returned to Miquella's charm and asked myself, how does Miquella's charm reflect the characteristics of his branches and needles? Well, first, I noticed that many of his followers had to have physical or spiritual contact with Miquella firsthand. For example, Miquella somehow found Freya in the aftermath of the Battle of Aeonia, and by kissing her forehead, he was able to draw out the rot from her flesh. She was left enchanted by this act of love. Reading into Ansbach's dialogue, we learn that Ansbach managed to wound the Empyrean, possibly resulting in Miquella losing an arm. But the Pureblood Knight comments that in that encounter, he had his own heart rather artfully stolen, which is the same phrase we see after Miquella embraces us twice at the Divine Gate, and of course, we will return to that in a little bit. On one hand, the phrase heart stolen is used in connection with a romantic love interest. You might say that your husband or wife or your partner has stolen your heart when you fell in love with them. But in the Japanese text, the kanji translated stolen literally means grasped, held, or touched. In other words, Miquella's love touches or even embraces the heart. The heart, we know, is the home of the soul in the Elden Ring universe. But the key for me is that Miquella can't steal our heart at a distance. Radahn must hold us in his arms and allow this new god to embrace us and promise us compassion and a place in his new order. But again, let's put a pin or a needle in this for now. Now, it's not explicit, but it's not hard to imagine that the other NPCs came in direct contact with Miquella as well. The implication here is that Miquella's charm likely requires a physical touch to take hold and pierce the heart, just as the branches and needles must pierce the flesh. So what about the effects of this power? When you analyze the NPC's stories and motivations, it seems as if the charm affects each one in a different, personal way. Moore says that Miquella's light banishes pain, the pain of his grief. Ansbach said that his love shrives clean, or literally forgives and purifies the hearts of men. Leda speaks of how it unites those naturally at odds. Tialie's obsession with Saint Trina is quelled. Hornsent's ache was soothed. Many of these words directly overlap with how the effects of the needles are described. At a pivotal moment in their lives, the NPCs encounter kindly Miquella, and their fates are altered. Prior allegiances and goals are set aside. Devotion to the young Empyrean is what remains. And just as the needles become ineffective if removed or broken, Miquella's charm on the NPCs breaks when he discards his Great Rune, at least before he walks through the Divine Gate. And so I realized, Miquella's love and its enchanting effect operates as an unalloyed golden needle for the soul. Miquella's power is unalloyed love, and the charm is its byproduct. But I hear you yelling at your screen right now. Before we consider the big narrative implication of this, allow me to address the purple elephant in the room. Near the southernmost point in the Land of Shadow, we find a cross of Miquella, isolated and far removed from all the rest. It reads, "I abandon here my doubt and vacillation." Nearby, a deep purple branch stands among the field of cerulean. This is the nectar blood burgeon, a young shoot heavy with velvety purple nectar, material used for crafting items, exceedingly rare to find, said to burgeon forth where the nectar-like blood of abandoned Trina pooled. Further south, you reach the fissure, a massive crater that leads to the entrance of a cave. Should you make it to the bottom before Miquella discards his great rune, you will be met by a golden barrier and a message that tells us it's been blocked by Miquella himself. Sir Ansbach, of course, wants to know about the crosses, and so you report the news back to him, to which he responds,
Well, I am much obliged. To think there was a cross left in such a faraway place, and the deep purple water lilies would be blooming there. This can only mean kindly Miquella has divested himself even of that, his adoring other self, his blossom of slumber.
When Miquella discards his great rune, it does more than break the charm. It breaks the seal over the cave entrance, allowing you to enter the stone coffin fissure. This area deserves its own long-form video. Honestly, no matter how hard you try, you cannot explain the fissure to me. There is no cataclysm, no act of God or man that can explain the presence of these massive boat-like coffins that are lodged in the walls of the fissure. If you take off the lore glasses and just bathe in the scene, you get the feeling that you are in a dream within a dream. Like an Eldenception. I'm sorry, please don't unsubscribe. The Fissure is a masterpiece of FromSoft's environmental storytelling. As you descend, you come to another cross which reads, "I abandon here my love." Looking on is a spirit who says, "Kindly Miquella, I see you've thrown away something you should not have. Under any circumstances, how will you salvation offer to those who cannot be saved, when you could not even save your other self?" Context here tells us that Saint Trina, Miquella's other self, is this love that's been abandoned. And according to this spirit, this is a mistake on Miquella's part. But as I reflected on these words, I couldn't help but remember these words from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 27, verses 41 to 42, in the context of Jesus's crucifixion. So also the chief priests with the scribes and elders mocked him, saying, "He saved others. He cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him." But we continue our descent. Further down, we stumble into a cave filled with putrescent slime and a single item, the velvet sword of Saint Trina. Silver sword of Saint Trina, now stained the color of velvet, inflicts eternal sleep. When Saint Trina was abandoned, the faint, light purple mists coalesced into an intoxicating, deep purple cloud. Just around the corner is another nectar blood burgeon, and these appear at different points throughout the fissure. Finally, we make our way to the final coffin and throw ourselves down into the depths. We take on the putrescent night and arrive finally at Saint Trina's grotto, where Tialier is slouched to the side. Before us is the stunning, captivating floral body of Saint Trina, tender Miquella's other self. So who and what is Saint Trina, and how does she coincide with Miquella's power? After all, I've shown how love is his power, but here we find her at the bottom of the fissure. Saint Trina was always a mystery. Her lore goes way back, even during the game's development cycle, with multiple side quests and items being cut. But as is the case for her other half, vestiges of Trina's character are littered across the lands between and the Shadow Realm. On the western edge of Caelid is the Forsaken Ruins, which houses the Sword of Saint Trina. Silver sword carried by clerics of Saint Trina inflicts sleep ailment upon foes. Saint Trina is an enigmatic figure. Some say she is a comely young girl. Others are sure he is a boy. The only certainty is that their appearance was as sudden as their disappearance. Then, in the snowfields, we can loot Saint Trina's torch from a carriage. Candle stand torch that burns with a light purple flame. The carving depicts Saint Trina, but in adult form, somewhat unnervingly. The light purple flame induces sleep. Blow into the candlestick's flame, creating a stream of hazy purple fire to cover the ground ahead. The intoxicating flames inflict the sleep ailment upon foes. Trina's purple flame is also described as intoxicating all the way here in the base game. When it comes to cut content, we see evidence of Trina's relationship with dreams and alleviating madness, particularly in the nomadic merchants. I find this really intriguing, considering that the only way for us to be free of the embrace of the frenzied flame is to use Miquella's needle. There is a mercy associated with Saint Trina, as her flame lulls a person to sleep away from the suffering and madness of this world and into the serenity of the dream world. After the charm breaks, Tialier declares his obsession and love for Saint Trina and her velvety slumber, and so he heads to the coast to find her. When we next encounter him, Tialier is slouched over in Trina's grotto, trying to drift off into her velvety sleep. He wants to hear her voice more than anything. The comparisons between Tialier and the journey of addiction are well attested. His self-loathing and his sheepishness. He wishes to drown it all in the sea of her slumber, never to wake again. I couldn't help but hear an echo of Moog when Tialier declares,
St. Trina's poison would plunge you into an eternal slumber. It must be me, and only me.
Saint Trina's nectar is merciful, and her love is deep, but she is Miquella's other self. In an interview, Miyazaki, translated, said that we should think of Miquella and Trina as, quote, two existences. Miquella is associated with gold, purity, and striving to relieve suffering through action. Trina is associated with purple, intoxication, and escaping suffering through slumber. It's also worth noting that on a color wheel, their colors are in direct opposition. Miquella's love leaves others enchanted by him, willing to serve him in bringing about a better world. Trina's love leaves others addicted and only self-serving. There's no malice in Saint Trina, but she is the underside of Miquella's unalloyed love. The story trailer for The Shadow of the Erdtree shows Trina falling down into the depths of the fissure as Leda declares that Miquella abandons his fate. I believe that should Miquella continue down the path of Empyreanhood in the name of the Golden Order, Saint Trina would be his fate. A love of himself that leaves others intoxicated in a power that allows them to avoid suffering rather than transcend it. It's also interesting to me that both Leda and Ansbach highlight Trina's love for Miquella. When we finally defeat Miquella, Trina dies along with him, showing how their existences are inseparable. And while Trina may love, or even be in love, with her other self, her answer to the supposed cage of divinity is for us to kill him, because that is the only answer she knows. In Saint Trina, we see how Miquella's story reflects both Christian and Buddhist teaching. Worldly love to the Buddhist is unhealthy attachment. Divesting oneself of such attachments on the path toward enlightenment allows you to truly love and empathize with the suffering of others and work towards their relief in acts of pure compassion. For Miquella, this meant literally cutting out and discarding his other half, his other existence, and allowing her to rest in the depths of a pit of putrescence. Scum Mage Infa has some great insight about this in one of his early videos about Miquella that I encourage you to check out as well. Just like with Jesus of Nazareth, others could not understand how he might be able to save anyone else if he could not even save his other self. But it was this act of sacrifice that would enable him to fulfill his promise. Saint Trina's true nature reflects, as Miyazaki said, the nature of Empyreans and the multiple aspects they can possess. That's a topic for another video, but in short, I believe Saint Trina is an outgrowth of Miquella's love that has either been corrupted by his great rune or grown in a moment of intense suffering and pain. And this is why we are only able to access her once his great rune is discarded. At 13 crosses, Miquella leaves behind pieces of his flesh and his soul. Yet on the other side of the divine gate, he returns in divine aspect, with 3.5 arms, eyes, legs, all matured beyond his nascent curse. And because he is still able to enchant us in his fight, we know that his capacity for love has returned in divine aspect as well. And that brings us at last to the divine gate and the implications of Miquella's love for the world of Elden Ring. At the top of Enir Ilim, at the divine gate, Miquella and Radahn follow the sacred rite and ascend as Lord and God. In their second phase, as light flashes all around, Radahn can lunge for us, wrap us in his arms, and draw us closer to the face of a god. You see, in the lands between, you can stand before another Empyrean, Lunar Princess Ranni. You can be a heathen and take Celivis's potion to her for his own sordid purpose. And should you continue to pester Ranni, she can simply wave her hand and take your life. That's terrifying. Instead, at the divine gate, after we crash his ascension party, Miquella can embrace us and promise us 1,000 years of compassion. We try to shake it off, but a second embrace may be successful, and Miquella then invites us to go together into his new age. Our health bar disappears, but we don't die. Instead, our tarnished bows their knee and strikes the same pose they do when they join Ranni in front of her dark moon. Heart stolen. We have been embraced by kind Miquella's love, and it sure seems like he's brainwashed us into following him. But in light of this video, and in order to make sense of all of this, we need to consider a different embrace. In the depths of Leyendell, we meet the three fingers and the promise of the flame of frenzy, to burn ourselves at the forge before melting it all away to allow chaos to take the world. To inherit this power, we strip down and enter the three fingers chamber where this monstrosity embraces us. Somehow this embrace imbues us and burns us with the essence of the Lord of Chaos. It doesn't matter how many mending runes you collect, or if you complete Ranni's side quest. If you have the flame of frenzy burning within you, your only choice in the end is to stand before the fractured body of America and become the Lord of Frenzy. This is your fate. The only way to undo this is to take Miquella's needle, the one which bears the Empyrean's name, to the heart of the storm in a Lord's mausoleum beyond time and pierce your own flesh with it. Its unalloyed power allows you to cheat fate, making it as if that embrace never happened. Choices return. The journey of the unalloyed needle mirrors the journey of Miquella himself. We find him in Mohg's bedchamber, bloodied and broken, right under the place where his sister clashed with Radahn. Just like the needle of his namesake, he is as of yet unfinished, nascent, on the way to godhood. His path in the land of shadow finds him abandoning the remnants of the sin and curse of his heritage, so that he might be wholly pure. This ultimately leads him to the divine gate, a place bathed in constant light, seemingly beyond time, another mausoleum where his mother once stood to become God herself. To reach him, we must burn another tree and enter a city that was once unreachable. Then, in an exchange that brings us full circle, Miquella's power that once broke Chaos's embrace on us now embraces our tarnished. His love banishes pain, shrives clean the heart, and wards away the influence of outer gods. For hundreds of hours, we have sat in front of a screen, controlling every move and decision our tarnished makes. We have invested the power of runes to make them stronger and more resilient and resistant. As their health bar has grown, so too has our ability to keep them fighting and killing and striving for a broken throne. Are we not the God controlling the fate of this tarnished from outside their world? So in Miquella's embrace, his unalloyed love pierces the heart of our tarnished and breaks the connection between them and us. We, the player, no longer have control. We can only move the camera and watch the scene from the outside. Our character no longer operates under our influence. Their thoughts now are only of love, and there is no health bar needed for one who has surrendered the throne and put down their sword. In godhood, Miquella becomes a living, unalloyed golden needle for the soul. The demigods of this world cling to what power they have as they long to return to a day long past. Godric grafts the tarnished onto himself to try to restore some golden age. Rykard devours and consumes, desiring the power of the very gods. Morgoth and Mohg both ignite with the curse of their blood and wish to either keep things as they are or revive an ancient dynasty. Melania's rot consumes her flesh, seeking to consume all, and her will keeps her fighting no matter the cost. Even Radahn utilizes the strength and burning ambition within him to hold back the stars and prove his might. But then there's Miquella, who grew up in the family and political climate of the Golden Order, surrounded by larger-than-life heroes with great power. He witnessed the suffering and sins of his world firsthand as his sister's condition only worsened. Miquella was brilliant and talented, but neither his intellect nor his handiwork could quell the pain he saw around him. Instead, his power was love. Just as glintstone could be concentrated and used to cast powerful spells, Miquella's love had a spiritual force behind it. Whenever he embraced or served those whom he loved, they would be left enchanted by him, willing to do anything in his name. I imagine that Miquella quickly realized the nature of his power. His unalloyed love had the ability to subdue the worst in others and draw them to his cause. No wonder Melania declared him the most fearsome Empyrean of them all. So the question this raises for me is, what would you do with this power? The power to love others into devotion and loyalty. Would you hide yourself away in a tower? Or would you employ it to fix the problems you see around you? After all, with great power comes great responsibility. Ultimately, Miquella's charm raises the age-old philosophical question. If God is real, why does suffering exist? It places the source of suffering within us and in the harmful outer influences that seek to conquer and divide. And it makes us reflect on how we would respond if a divine being held the power of a love so blinding, so pure, that only love and devotion remained. Would we lay down our arms and join him, or would we use his own power against him, resist his charm, and continue to fight for the crown? The choice is up to us. Until next time, may the grace of gold guide your steps.